Welcome to Shattered the Podcast. STP is the story of my journey from the depths of mental illness to a place where I could live again. Okay, this is a conversation that I've been looking forward to for a couple of weeks. I'd like to introduce our guest today, Craig Ball. G'day, Craig. How are you today, mate?
G'day, Mark. Yeah, really good, thanks. And g'day to everyone listening. It's really nice to be online and doing this for real again.
Now, mate, after having chatted to you off air for a couple of minutes, I feel really weird doing this, but I want to give a bit of a CV for you. You are a seasoned professional speaker, consultant, mental health mentor, and also, and quite significantly, you are a veteran of the Australian Army.
Yeah, I was in the Australian Army full-time for about 7.5 years. In 2006, I signed up to go full-time. I'd been a reservist prior to that. And I had a bit of time away from the Army Reserve. I felt that I still had, I guess, unfinished business in a lot of ways, but I kind of wanted to, I'd been teaching what I teach now since the early 2000s, and I kind of wanted to put that to the test a little bit. But I was also, there's a number of reasons. I wanted more life experience. I wanted to be able to get out there and do more in the world, and I was consciously aware that Afghanistan was kicking off, that my previous qualifications in the Army Reserve might set me up, and hey they did in ways I didn't expect. So it was a pretty awesome experience.
I'm excited to hear a soldier talk about their whole experience as being positive, particularly when, like yourself, you've come out the other side with mental health struggles and mental illness diagnosis. Okay, mate, so you come home from being in the Army, you've just served overseas, you've been gung-ho, you've done the John Wayne thing, you come home and something's wrong. At what point did you start to realise that something wasn't right?
Early. I had a traumatic year, the first deployment. I had, in 2009, we lost a guy in training. Mason Edwards died in October 2009. We're down at Coltana training area. And this is a guy who was just amazing, and I'd been having beers with him a couple of weeks earlier for my birthday. And so, yeah, it hit very, very hard, hit our whole company very hard. And then we, he settled up. We worked through as best we could. And then we got ready and we deployed. I went to Afghanistan in February 2010. Largely non-kinetic, what they would refer to as non-kinetic. For those not familiar with the term, we didn't get in a lot of gunfights. There was a lot of intelligence gathering and things like that. There was a few stoushes here and there, but nothing significant. And in June, 21st of June 2010, there was a helicopter accident. Lost 3 mates, Ben Chuck, Scotty Palmer and Tim Applin, and 7 other guys were maimed, like significantly injured, some never to be able to do their job again. I think maybe 1 or 2 got to do their job again. And at this stage, I'd also, on top of that, to throw, it's like losing a family member, only intensify that by about 100. You got an auntie somewhere you haven't spoken to in 20 years, she passes, or you had a cousin that like you didn't like. It's different. It's like people that you've been through shared experiences. You're very, very close. So yeah, it magnifies that significantly. But then on top of that, I'd had a really difficult trip. I got bullied by a platoon commander, and it was so difficult. So after a 4.5 month trip, at the 3.5 months mark, I removed myself from the platoon, being a radio operator, as well as, I guess, commando qualified. I had the opportunity to go and work in the radio room, which I did for the sake of my mental health. There was a challenge there. It's probably the first instance, and then 2 weeks later, bang, helicopter crash. And so I came home, and you're like, dude, what do I do now? And some of the things I noticed were I had pretty significant anxiety when I had to, when I had people in my life, like I was a single bloke then, and if I was going to stop seeing someone, for example, I would, when I stopped, telling them I didn't want to see them anymore, I felt quite extreme anxiety around that, and I got quite heightened to what I thought were situations that I didn't think would be workable long term. Personality traits, things like that. I thought I can't necessarily be with this person, but that was heightened and it probably, really challenging there for a while. But not only that, it was really about what I got quite introspective about. And it was like what happened was I'd come from 4.5 intense, very, very intense months in a war zone where your word is everything. That to feel as if that's not, or if that's compromised. I also took a holiday. I pushed myself. Every time I came back, both times I came back from deployment, and every Christmas I'd take all the leave that I had, and I had 6 weeks. And I moved house, moved to a new apartment, and then I went on a trip overseas for 3 weeks to the States. And at that stage, on this first period of leave, I couldn't think about the trip that I just had and not be moved to tears. And I was in San Diego on a hotel, staying at a hotel, and they had yoga on the roof. And I'd done a bit of yoga, and I kind of liked it, although I wasn't very good at it. And I was on prior to the class starting. The teacher said, "Okay, I want you to set an intention. What do you want to get out of this?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." I thought to myself, "I don't know if this can occur, but I'd like to feel less emotionally, moved and deeply upset by what's happened." And I was holding some pose, and I was holding my leg up in the air, and I started to shake, and I thought, here we go. Usually I'd fall over and take a step and try to stop falling over. And I felt this energy leave my body, and I saw this sort of clear sort of movement in the air almost. It's a bit hard to explain, but after that I felt okay about what had happened. I felt like I could start to heal a bit, and that was pretty intense. But the whole next year, you go from a deployment straight onto domestic counterterrorism, and you're busy every month. You're away, traveling the country, doing stuff. So it took a long time. Yeah, it took ages to really come to terms with stuff.
You've spoken about a couple of things very, very briefly in there, which I think for somebody that's a civilian like myself, we truly wouldn't understand when a soldier felt like you did, that your mental health was struggling and you wanted to perhaps change your situation, go into the radio room. The stigma attached to that, was that something that you had to deal with? Was it something that the Army was super supportive with? What was your experience of just being able to step back and say, hey, mentally, I'm not dealing with this well? What was your experience with your colleagues at the time?
Well, I didn't say it like that at the time, as you'd
Oh,
expect,
no.
like it's a bit of a challenge. It's really, really good way of putting it in question. I knew I had that option being a radio operator. I knew that, a lot of my colleagues were, radio operators, were working in the radio room, typing up live comms or voice and everything like that as it came through. So I knew what the role was. And I was like, I was, in a way, it was telling this platoon commander, I quit working for you. So whilst I might work under you in the hierarchy, it's almost like me sacking you. It's like, you can't sack someone who's above you, but it's like going, I'm done with you. I'm not going to work. And so that was an empowering thing. And when I left there, a bunch of the guys, like the grunts and that I'd worked with, so I'd been a grunt as a reservist. So I kind of understood and always felt like I was an infantry. Grunt is, for those listening, is an infantry guy. I felt, really understood and felt part of that. And I had guys come up to me afterwards and say, mate, we so respect what you've done, because they'd seen me copping it hard, like this guy. And they were like, at least a couple of guys came up and said, one guy I remember, Scotty Palmer, goes to me, it's one of the guys who died in a helicopter crash when it all happened. He goes, at least you're going to enjoy the rest of your trip. You don't have to put up with this crap anymore. And another guy came up to me and said, mate, I always respected you, but I respect you even more for just walking on this one. You've got to do it. And it was like, yeah, so I had an amazing bunch of guys that I work with. I'd made a deal with my platoon sergeant that I could still come back and use the coffee machine in our platoon room. I was basically supplying our entire force element with coffee. A really good dear friend of mine was a coffee roaster, and he was just sending me as much coffee over there as he could get rid of. I couldn't believe his generosity, and he's still one of my best mates to this day. So, you make up for it in different ways. But how I felt about my mental health was, I felt myself really, starting to hate this person. who was bullying me, and to unhealthy ways. You think, oh, what I'd like to do to them, all this sort of stuff, and you let yourself overindulge in those feelings. And I was like, this is how this is manifesting for me. It's not the person, first, that I want to be, and secondly, it's not sustainable. It's not healthy. Like, sure, I might be able to try and drag myself out through another month, but what's the deficit going to be for me? And so that became a really important piece to make a call on. And I'll be honest with you, I pushed to try to get to that 3.5 month mark. So I thought, well, 1 month left, that will be, at least I can hang my hat on that. And so I did everything I could to try to do it. And I haven't resonated with guilt for most of my since I was probably in high school, because I figured guilt was a tool of manipulation and other people like to use on you. So I didn't feel guilty leaving the platoon. I missed it. I missed them. And funny little things happen. Like I remember going to make a coffee one day in the platoon room, and I walked past my old room, and my replacement was staying in the same bed space that I've been staying in. The door was closed, and they had everyone's name on it. And under me, where my name had been, they put Bawley 2.0. So yeah, it was kind of, humour's an awesome thing, and all the stories about diggers and humour and stuff like that, it still exists. They're like these custodians of this culture that, despite the fact that everybody's different to every other generation and they move on and forward, this amazing culture remains of mateship and things like that. So yeah, pretty awesome.
The Australia is about to commemorate our service in Vietnam. When it's no secret that when our diggers came home from Vietnam, they had a tough time. And there was one incident in particular that I wanted to ask you about, and it was when we saw the fall of Kabul, when we saw all those scenes at the airport, the people trying to get onto the planes. I had a thought, and I called my dad and I said, well, Dad, what was it like when you saw the fall of Saigon? Thinking he was a guy that just went over to do his job. He wanted to help. He was based in a place where he had a lot of contact with the locals. He could look back at his service with pride. When you were seeing the fall of Kabul, how was that for you when you reflected on your service, that you'd given up so much and clearly you understood that it had taken a mental toll on you? What were your feelings around that time?
First of all, and this is a lot of the conversations that I had over there, and like the second deployment I did, I was mentoring the local police, so I got a lot of exposure to locals. But we're all very conscious of the fact that, 10 years on from here, or whenever America pulls out, Taliban's going to come in and take over. We always expected that. I'm not sure if other parts of the military and people that struggled during that time probably didn't think that for whatever reason, but we were always really honest about that. And I considered it in the space of what can you actually control, and that is the best I can try to do in the 6 months or the 4.5 months that I'm there is try to improve the situation for those people that I'm lucky enough to work with in that time. I can try to influence that somehow. That's all I can do. There's nothing I can control. And understanding that, not overgeneralizing between my efforts and the outcome, or the outcome and myself and who I am, because that's not part of me. You feel like you leave a part of yourself there, potentially. I mean, that's a sentimental approach. But I just knew that it happened. I thought it was a shame, but it was. And I even posted a short video on social media to say, anyone listening, be proud of what you did. Know that in the time you did there, you served with dignity, and you try to give dignity back to the people there, and that's the best you can hope for, because we have no control, and this is just an unfortunate reality.
Yeah. I love that thought of leaving a part of yourself there, but hopefully that part of yourself was giving dignity to Afghanis or Iraqis or Vietnamese or, wherever our troops have been based. I truly hope that that's the way that most diggers would feel about their service. It's a beautiful way to think about it, I think.
100%. I had the great privilege. I wanted to go back to Afghanistan for the second deployment. I mean, I probably didn't have, I was at a unit that was deploying faster than any other unit in the Australian Army. I mean, I could have gone a third time, but I chose to go back. I wanted to try somehow. Now, this sounds like a bit of a crazy decision, but I wanted to go back to try to make up for having a bad trip and try to have a good trip and leave my memory of it positively. And I did. I went back and I thought I'd just be working in the radio room again, and I got offered the opportunity to mentor the Afghani partner force, who are the local police in HF radios, and that was so much more than just doing that deployment, like what you would think it is. It was learning and development, it was ambassadorship, it was infrastructure development. There was so many different parts to it, and I did my, I've been speaking all these years. I did. It was an empower every session I ran with them. I tried to empower them as much as I could. Made a fuss. Somebody moves ahead in the session, like we're teaching the radio, and someone sets up the charger and puts the radio on the charger before I get to the lesson about the charger. I got him to stand up, got everyone to give him a round of applause. I remember the guy to this day. He was bigger than all the others. His name was Lando, and I said, "Everyone, Lando, a big round of applause." And he was grin. You couldn't wipe the grin off his face for a week. Like these are things that make in a very aggressive patriarchal society where they would have been beaten for initiative, to make them feel like legends that they were and the champions. And I was given all of these negative about them before I started working with them. I was told they're lazy, all the rest of it, and I was like, we'll see. And day one I started working with them, I said, I'm a guest in your country and I'm very humble and grateful to be here, and my job is to show you how smart you are, because formal schooling does not equal intelligence. I will show you how smart you are. And at every opportunity, I made them the heroes. I made them feel good. I made them really look like who I thought they were, because they survived to this age in a country as dangerous as that. They must be doing something right.
Now, you had a very unique way of connecting with these guys in the whole guest, viewing yourself as being a guest in their country. But I know that you had a particular breakthrough. The Afghanis were going out and they weren't achieving their goals, and you did something that I don't know if it's unique, but it was very special when I was listening to it, to get these guys, I guess I want to say, over the hump. It was like they had a mental block. They wanted to do the work, but they were going out and they weren't doing it. And I wonder if you just share a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, that could be viewed as them being, the average person, and fair enough to the average person, will go, they're just lazy, they're never going to do anything, all this sort of stuff. I'm like, screw that, we've got to find a way. And I was like, every time before they go out on a job, I'd take them and retrain, make them demonstrate getting the comms to work, and we'd confirm that it was working. Every time they go out, it wouldn't work. And so one Friday was their day off, it was a holy day, so I'd go and visit them. And one Friday I went to visit them with my number one interpreter, who was at least my height, and and quite a broad-shouldered guy as well. His name was Paul, and another guy called Naki Bulla, who was respected by all of them, and he was my age at that point, about not too different from me in size. And so the three of us walking in, and these other young guys, they looked like they were not fed well, and had almost like malnourished, and they were scared and probably got beaten for much worse than anything they'd ever done. And I said, let's go into the room. I want to have their radio room there. I said, in their little office, I said, let's have a chat. And they were starting to shake. I said to Paul, I said, please say, for God's sake, stop shaking. You're making me nervous. And I said to them, do you remember what I first said to you when we first started working together? And they said, I don't think they could remember their own names. I said, I'm a guest in your country. You can't be in trouble with me. It doesn't work that way. Okay? I'm here to support you. And I said, I just want to know why you think the radios aren't working. And they said, we don't think the radios are working because we don't believe that they can work. I said, that's all. It's a belief. I said, I'm not here to change your beliefs. It doesn't take the smartest person in the world to look around and see you guys have got some pretty strong beliefs in this country. All right? That would be fair. I'm not trying to here to change it. I'm not here to stop those beliefs. What I am here to do is to ask you to try. And I said, Naki Bulla goes out with you because he was the comms mentor. I was mentoring him. If he comes out with you outside the wire and shows you that these radios work, are you prepared to have a go? Yes, my Pashto name was Hoishal, which means happy. It was like, yes, Hoishal, we will try. I go, fantastic. That's all I can ask for. And we all had a hug, and everyone was happy. And then they went out the next week and got the comms working over 200 k's away in northern Kandahar. And when they pulled back into Tarin Kowt and came into Camp Russell, and Naki Buller ran up to me with his phone going, look at this, and it was a video. One of my interpreters was there. He said, it's a video of the radios working over 200 k's away. And it was just an incredible experience. But I think what made that was the relationship building that we did, because these guys needed to go. Like they needed a chance to show, and I did everything I could to support them, and I think that's what worked.
Mm. I love it, because when I first heard that story, I watched you tell that story. I was so impressed, because in many ways it seems to be the way that you kind of address mental illness, in that it's not a failing, it's not a something that you've done wrong. It's something that if you have the right tools and the right understanding, you can have a good life. Does that sound
Yeah, I think so. I very much have that belief, is that it's just something you've got to manage. It might be a whole other job. It might feel like a part-time job with no set hours. For some of us, it might be a full-time job with no set hours. It gets you at times. But you can learn about your triggers. You can learn about the various things that upset you. And yeah, the right tools are vital. I was just fortunate through a most roundabout way discovering what I think are the right tools, certainly the right tools for me and for many people, years prior. And I dedicated myself to teaching that to people. And it just so happened that I had the right tools at the right time to work through it. And I've taught those in many different facets and formats, but the deployment prior, I was actually got asked to do some presentation skills training for my platoon in their downtime, which they probably hated, even though some months later, like a year or so later, I got told that they actually probably appreciated it more than they realised. But I teach the same skills for dealing with nerves in public speaking. Like they're applicable to life as a philosophy.
Speaking of tools, I want to give you a shameless plug, because your book that is out, Reclaim Your Power. So I went back to my radio announcer days there. I apologize. I want to speak this book, because I've listened to a lot of the stuff that you've done. I've read excerpts. I got sent a fairly significant excerpt, and I'm not one for self-help books. I'm not one for books about, hey, here's the train wreck that was my life. If I'm going to invest my time reading something, I want to read something that I'm going to learn, that's going to skill me up, and that's going to have a positive influence. And I can't see your book having any other effect than that. Can you tell us about the book? Why did you decide, hang on, I'm going to put all my secrets in this book? Why did you decide to do that?
Thanks, Mark. There's a couple of things. I've been trying to crack the code, I guess, for years to be able to do this stuff more and with more people, and to get out there and to do a lot, and stuff. And the book became part of that. I was learning from a guy from the States who's been behind every major speaker for the last 40 odd years. And I was doing his program, and it got to the point where it said, now write your book. And I've been thinking about this stuff and content creation for a long, long time. And during the COVID process, one of my clients had renewed my contract for 18 months just prior to COVID lockdown. So I had guaranteed work, but the work dried up due to a procurement issue. We just had nothing to do. And I went, awesome. So I've developed this online mentoring program that I've got. And then I got all of the videos. So there's 10 modules. There's like about 30 videos. I got a program that you can actually create subtitles that you can download as an a Word file, and downloaded them all into a block, put them together, and then I started writing the book following the process of the order of the mentoring program. And then when I finish a chapter, I'd go and read what was gobbledygook to a point with those subtitles all scrunched together, and try and find any pieces that I'd missed. But the catalyst for it came when I sold a property, and we came up short on against the mortgage. It lost some money. So I called the bank, said, hey, look, no problem, we can service this. I just need to use the lender of the mortgage insurance. And the bank stole our money that we had in the bank. And they just took it and blamed it on the lender's mortgage insurance provider. And it was extraordinarily stressful. And I could have held the bank to account a little bit better than I did, but it made me just go, stuff this. I'm writing this book because I don't ever want my family to have to struggle or be worried by what was, seemingly, I guess, in the scheme of things, a pretty small amount of money. And I was like, no way. So that drove me. And in about a month, I put it all together. And it's stuff I've been sharing forever. But the real point behind it is I wanted it to be conversational. I wanted people to have to be able to feel as though we're having a chat. I wanted them to take what they could and give as much as possible. Back in the early days when I was first trying to get into stuff, I had no money. I used to go to all the free events. And so now I try and make my free events and my free or my low-cost offerings have heaps of value because I want people to go away and go, that was awesome. If they ever want to work with me in the future, they'll know that I give a lot of value and I care. And the book's no different. I want people to actually, and I've had people say, maybe people feel they can do it themselves. Well, maybe they can. Some people will. So what's wrong with giving the people who just want to do it themselves enough value to do it? And this has transformed my life. The products, the tools are in this book. It's why I've been able to thrive in spite of my mental health conditions. For those that like knowing about those, it's chronic PTSD, generalized anxiety disorder, alcohol use disorder, and major depressive disorder. I remember rattling him off that quick to a cop in COVID who tried to make me wear a mask, and his head just about spun. He's an older copper, and he goes, I said, I got an exemption. I told him. He's like, oh. I said, I'm just highly functioning. I said, do you want to see my diagnosis? Oh, if you got it on you, yeah, here you go. But I've worked for that, and it's a challenge. But other people can get past it and manage it effectively too. And that's part of where the book's from. The book's also, I think, what the base philosophy is a 6-week therapy. I've had CBT done to me, and I wasn't really impressed with it. And I know a lot of veterans who feel similarly. The CBT was originally taken from a thing called rational emotive behaviour therapy, and it was watered down and turned, in my opinion, into something much less effective. But the original version, I know of therapists that complain that someone comes to them, sees them for 6 weeks, and then they go away and they don't see them again for a couple of years, come back for another 6 weeks when something goes wrong in their life, forgetting everything. Because it's been designed as a philosophy of living. That just happens to be the tool. So that's how I teach it. Because everyone's got a philosophy, and whether they like it or not, and making changes and zeroing in on that philosophy, I think is vitally important to help, the way you do things moving forward, and it helps to shape that. So I'm after trying to help people to do much more. It's more like transformational change than a pep talk. There's a lot in there.
My son actually asked the other day, I was talking to him about books that he should read, and he asked an interesting question. He said, well, Dad, you've been going to therapy, and for all of his life he's not known me without a mental illness. He said, why do you keep trying to find stuff? Why do you keep trying to read more books? And I had the image of a man that was drowning, and I'm standing on the ship, and he's in the water and he's drowning. And I just told him, would I just throw one life vest or one flotation device, or would I throw all of the flotation devices? And that's what I see as the beauty of your contribution is your book, your courses may not be the be all and end all for every particular person, but it's just another one of those valuable tools that, they might read something and they can put it in the back of their mind and go, okay, it doesn't resonate with me just yet, but down the track they'll go, oh, hang on, there's that other thing that was helping this other person. So I love the fact that you've put the book out there. I'm grateful that you have. I want to also just highlight your website. Lots of websites all about here's me, here's my book, buy my stuff, let me take your money. But your site has so much more than that.
Thanks for that. We've got, I'm not sure the ones you've got there, but there's There's reclaimyourbook.com, which is for the book, Reclaim Your Power. People can buy it off that. They get it actually cheaper than if they go through all of the online platforms, but we're on everything. There's Change Seminars. We've got changeseminars.com. And if people want to subscribe to my database, I send out a heap of value. YouTube, I'm on youtube.com /@AskCraigBall. And helpmereclaimMyPower.com, where they can sign up for a free 2.5 hour webinar to learn heaps about how it all works and how they operate. So there's heaps of stuff out there they can get, and I've really worked hard to ensure people get value.
No, I can attest to that. And we're going to, for people that are listening, we're going to put all of those links in our bio. Is everybody okay?
Oh, yeah. My wife's just come home with my daughter. Just putting her to bed.
All right, mate. Well, let's we're going to put all those links up on the descriptions. They're going to show up on the video and that. Mate, I want to just give you the final chance. I call it the final word. I want to give you 30 seconds to just say whatever's on your heart. If somebody was out there struggling, maybe they're a veteran, what is something that you would say just in 30 seconds or so, whatever you think?
First of all, forgive yourself. Often things are not our fault, and even if they are, you did your best. I don't believe in blame. So I think start by forgiving yourself. Be prepared to reach out. Talking about our problems may not save everyone, but it's going to save an awful lot more people. I've got a really dear friend who got a diagnosis of chronic PTSD and depression and a number of other things, and he said to me once, "It's okay for you because you're a talker." Well, we don't have that option. We all have to start trying to share it, because by sharing it, you lighten the load and you start to do that work. But for God's sake, forgive yourself, because it's one of the most important building blocks of getting your mental health on track.
Mate, that was beautiful. We got a little bit of your daughter in the background there, but I don't care. What you said was just so beautiful. Craig, I want to say thank you once again, mate. It has been an absolute joy talking to you. I'm sorry that I've kept you longer than I promised I would, but I appreciate your time. I appreciate your generosity, mate.
It's my privilege, Mark, and I really thank you so much for that. I hope that somebody listening gets something, even if it's like you said. I have exactly the same philosophy. One little kernel, one little idea that might shift something for you in the complex, the complex build-up of our mental health and state and everything else. So hopefully we get there somehow.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Shattered the Podcast. I'm Mark. Special thanks to my producer, Meredith Brosnan, and also to Torian, Kevin, and Lorraine. And we can't forget the amazing band Adelaide, who let us use their song as our theme. For more information, check us out on all your socials, STP Shattered the Podcast.